So in this video, it's going to be kind of a hodgepodge. I would like to talk just a little bit about tone. I would like to talk to you a little bit about flanking and how that rule works. And I would like to talk to you about how often you can rest and what you can expect as a result of a rest, and maybe when it's appropriate to suggest a rest to your party. Goal is to keep the video under 6 minutes, so we got to get going. Basically, in this situation we've thrown together on the board here, Nellie and William have found themselves in a bit of a sticky wicket. They are facing an unending horde of animated armors, and those animated armors are marching towards them. I want to move them this way just a little bit. So as these guys march towards them and move in a block in this direction, they are not actually behaving the most intelligently that they could. Because if these characters wanted to really stick the screws to William, they would move into a position something like this. Because in this shape, they are able to get flank in several several different ways here. Flank is basically when someone is in front of you and behind you. It is much more difficult for a character to keep their eye on both of the people that are threatening them at the same time. And so because they both take turns jumping at this person or threatening them and making small motions, they are easier to hit than they normally would be. So as William turns back and forth, hold on, let me correct this. As William turns back and forth and is looking at these two, the idea is that this animated armor and this animated armor, because they are working together, are going to both receive flank when they are attacking William. So when this guy makes an attack, he'll roll at advantage, meaning he is literally twice as likely to hit, and this guy will also roll at advantage, twice as likely to hit. That's bad news. When these six guys roll in, advantage, 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 advantage. That's really, really, really bad for William. What was already going to be several attacks against him is now a huge number of attacks at advantage. But there are some things that we can do to prevent this when we are setting ourselves up. If instead, Nellie and another ally, let me add someone else into this situation. If Nellie and another ally choose to take positions here and here, at a minimum, this guy has to walk much further to go and get flank on William. But even with them here, we have eliminated several different sources of flank so that now William is only taking advantages from 2 different sources rather than 6 of them. So with that said, flank also works for you, and it's something that you ought to seek out anytime you can find it. You are twice as likely to hit when someone is flanked by you and an ally. And several of the people in your party gain massive benefits from getting to roll at advantage. If Steve rolls at advantage and he gets a critical hit, he can then say, I smite. And a paladin smite is a beautiful thing because he gets to take 2d8 already just for a first level spell and throw him on there. On a critical, that's 4d8 on a first level spell, plus what he already does with his weapon, which is a d8, for a total of like 6d8 for a first level spell slot and 1 hit because you chose to stand right here. That's huge. Box gets sneak attack anytime that he is able to attack at advantage. That's why he has his cunning action, so he can slip, dodge, duck, hide, and do all that stuff. But if he's choosing to attack in range, in melee range, I should say, then he needs you guys to step forward and provide that flank for him. These 2 opportunities right here set Box up really nicely at the expense of William because these things are for sure going to come around here and go back to beating him like a drum. But anyway, you get the idea. That's flank. If you have any questions, please let me know. Let's talk about how often we can rest. Resting comes in 2 varieties. You have long rests, which can happen once per day, and you have short rests, which are hourly, and you can take as many of them in a day as you would like to. When you long rest, you get everything back, but you spend 8 hours in one position, basically doing nothing more strenuous than reading and setting up a tent. On a short rest, you're just chilling out in an area, having a drink, eating some food, getting some hit dice back. You are welcome to do either of these things at any time, but that does not prevent you from some of the consequences of hanging out in a space for a longer section of time. In the last session, I feel like I gave you some bad advice on how you could rest. You're welcome to attempt to rest anywhere. But if there are enemies in a house or there are ghosts living somewhere nearby, they might show up. And it comes down in those circumstances to some random dice rolls on my end to see if we've triggered a random encounter. The last thing I'd like to talk to you about is tone. Tone is the difference between Monty Python and Game of Thrones. There's both motherfuckers on horses. We're running around. We're knights. We're seeing castles. We're doing the whole thing. But one of those is an epic tale of loss and struggle and what it means to be a good person and how we come together as a country. And the other is a nonstop laugh fest about a deadly rabbit. So I think that if we are going to go through a horror campaign, it feels the most appropriate and the most meaningful if we take the campaign and treat it with some reverence and the appropriateness of the tone that I think it is due. I don't mind at all for you to crack a joke or to be goofy because I think people in real world situations when they are stressed crack jokes to relieve tension. But with that said, if it's nonstop jokes, it feels, in the words of Matt Colville, like a cream pie gets thrown from off screen and hits somebody. And that can be a very jarring feeling when a tone is being built by the people at the table together. If you are constantly making jokes or constantly doing things that don't really make sense in the context that they're happening, just because they can happen, or just because you think that it would be interesting to see, that's cool every now and again. But if it's happening over and over and over again, you're essentially waging war on the tone of the campaign. And it starts to grow frustrating on me as a DM, if I'm being honest. And I'd imagine that there are other people in the party that feel similarly. Maybe I'm alone in this. Maybe we'll talk about it after this video and you guys will be like, that's ridiculous. I want jokes and cream sickles thrown at everybody. I don't know, whatever. But when that's all said and done, personally, I think that with an air of gravitas to the campaign, it is more meaningful when people make sacrifices and choose to do things and put their neck out. And I look forward to seeing maybe a slight tonal shift from what we've had thus far. I know it's session 2 and we're also figuring out our characters, but that's why I kind of want to bring this up at the beginning as I'm starting to see some things so that we're not 30 sessions in and you're like, why didn't you bring this up when it was beginning to happen? So long story short, I'm really enjoying playing with you guys. I think this is the last of the videos in this series until something else comes up and I feel like making one, I guess. I appreciate you. If you've watched through all these, you are a good noodle. If you comment yellow spaghetti in the chat, I will throw you an inspiration at the start of our next session.